The blood-curdling scream of Serena Moss pierced the oppressive summer heat as she fought against the hands that tried to tear her child from her arms. It was 1871, in the unforgiving territory of New Mexico, and Serena's world was collapsing around her like the walls of a burning homestead. "You owe money, woman." "Payment's due," growled Harold Daniels, the saloon owner whose meaty fingers dug into her shoulder. Behind him stood his associate, a man known only as the collector, whose cold eyes assessed the value of both mother and child like cattle at auction. "Please," Serena begged, clutching her 4-year-old daughter Emma tighter to her chest. The child's face was buried in her mother's shoulder, tiny body trembling. "I'll work more hours. I'll clean, I'll cook, anything, just don't take my baby." The collector stepped forward, his voice businesslike. $200, Daniels said you owe. The woman might fetch 100 at a mining camp. The girl. His eyes narrowed as he examined Emma. Young enough to train upright, could go for another 100 to the right buyer. Serena's knees buckled. The debt had accumulated after her husband died in a mining accident 6 months earlier. With no skills beyond cooking and cleaning, she'd taken work at Daniel's saloon, but the meager wages barely covered food, let alone the mounting debt her husband had left behind. "You have until sundown," Daniel spat, releasing her shoulder with a shove that sent her stumbling into the dusty street. The blazing New Mexico sun beat down mercilessly as Serena clutched Emma to her chest and stumbled toward the edge of town, her mind racing. Sundown was barely 3 hours away. No one in Copper Springs would help her, not with Daniel's influence reaching into every corner of the small mining town. On the outskirts of town, Serena collapsed beneath the shade of a scraggly juniper, tears streaming down her face. Emma's small hands patted her cheeks. "Don't cry, Mama," the little girl whispered, her brown curls so like her father's bobbed as she tilted her head. "Is the bad man coming back?" "No, sweetheart," Serena lied, her voice breaking. "We're just going on a little adventure." "But where?" The nearest town was 30 miles away, impossible to reach on foot before Daniel's men would track them down. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Serena's heart leap to her throat. She scrambled to her feet, searching for somewhere to hide, but the barren landscape offered little cover. A lone rider approached, silhouetted against the setting sun. Tall and broad-shouldered atop a powerful buckskin stallion, he slowed as he spotted them. Serena clutched Emma tighter, ready to run, though she knew it was futile. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, removing his hat to reveal sun-streaked brown hair and a face weathered by years under the western sky. His eyes, a startling shade of green, assessed them quickly. "Madam," he said, his voice low and steady, "you appear to be in some distress." "We're fine," Serena replied automatically, stepping back. "Just resting." The man's gaze flickered to the bruises forming on her arm where Daniels had grabbed her, then to the frightened child. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Name's Ethan McCall," he said, keeping his distance as if sensing her fear. "Was heading into town, but something tells me that might not be the safest place for you two right now." Before Serena could respond, shouts echoed from the direction of town. 3 riders were approaching, dust billowing behind them. "That's them," Serena whispered, terror gripping her heart. "They want to sell us." "My daughter," her voice broke. Something dangerous flashed in Ethan's eyes. Without hesitation, he stepped toward his horse, untied a rifle from his saddle and turned back to her. "Get behind me, madam," he said quietly. "You don't understand," Serena protested. "There are more of them in town. They'll kill you." Ethan's mouth curved into a grim smile. "Wouldn't be the first to try." He looked at Emma, then back at Serena. "Both of you ride with me now. I know safe passage out of these parts." The approaching men were close enough now that Serena could make out Daniel's face, contorted with rage. The collector rode beside him, a rope coiled at his saddle, a sight that made Serena's blood run cold. "No time to argue," Ethan said, holstering his rifle and lifting Emma into his arms. The child stiffened momentarily, then relaxed as Ethan gently placed her on his horse. He turned to Serena, extending his hand. "Trust me." With Daniels and his men less than 200 yards away, Serena had little choice. She took Ethan's hand and let him boost her onto the saddle behind Emma. In one swift movement, he mounted behind them both. "Hold on tight," he murmured, and with a click of his tongue, the buckskin leaped forward. The shouts behind them grew more frantic as Ethan guided the horse off the main trail and into a narrow ravine that Serena hadn't noticed. The buckskin navigated the rough terrain with surprising agility despite carrying 3 riders. "Stop, McCall," Daniel's voice echoed off the ravine walls. "That woman and child are my property." Ethan didn't slow. Instead, he guided the horse deeper into the network of ravines. "No human being is property," he said quietly, though only Serena could hear him. His voice was calm, but she felt the tension in his body as he controlled the powerful horse. They rode hard until the sun had fully set and the desert night wrapped around them like a cool blanket. Only when Ethan was certain they weren't being followed did he finally slow the horse to a walk. "There's a place about 2 miles ahead," he said over his shoulder. "Old line shack I use sometimes. We'll be safe there for the night." Serena nodded, too exhausted to speak. Emma had fallen asleep against her chest, small body limp with exhaustion. The line shack was little more than a one-room cabin nestled against a rocky outcropping, nearly invisible in the darkness. Ethan dismounted first, then carefully lifted Emma down, cradling her sleeping form with a gentleness that surprised Serena. He helped Serena down next, steadying her when her legs buckled from the hours of riding. Inside, the shack was sparse but clean. A stone fireplace, a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a small cupboard holding basic supplies. Ethan laid Emma on the bed and covered her with a worn quilt. "You should rest too," he said, moving to the fireplace. "I'll keep watch." Serena sank onto the edge of the bed beside her daughter, watching Ethan as he efficiently built a small fire. In the flickering light, she studied his profile, the straight nose, the stubbled jaw, the lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. "Why are you helping us?" she finally asked. "You don't know us." Ethan added another stick to the fire before answering. "I know enough. I know what Daniels is, what he does to people who can't fight back." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "And I know what it's like to be hunted." Something in his tone told Serena not to press further. Instead, she asked, "Where will we go?" "I have friends about 3 days' ride from here. Paiute family that took me in once when I was in a bad way. They'll help until we figure out something more permanent." He paused. "If you want my help, that is. We have nowhere else to go," Serena admitted, her voice small. Ethan nodded. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Despite her exhaustion, Serena found sleep elusive. She watched as Ethan moved quietly around the small cabin, checking supplies, cleaning his revolver, occasionally peering out the small window into the darkness. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to danger, yet the way he had handled Emma revealed a gentleness she hadn't expected. When he finally settled in a chair by the door, rifle across his lap, Serena gathered her courage. "My name is Serena," she said softly. "Serena Moss. And my daughter is Emma." Ethan's eyes met hers across the dimly lit room. "Get some rest, Mrs. Moss. You're safe tonight." "It's Miss," she corrected quietly. "Her father. He died in the mines." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, understanding perhaps, or shared pain. He nodded once. I'm sorry for your loss. Serena closed her eyes, and despite her fear, despite the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, she slept. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Ethan was already up, preparing a simple breakfast of coffee, jerky, and hardtack. Emma woke with the resilience of childhood, regarding Ethan with solemn curiosity as he knelt to offer her a tin cup of water. "Are you a real cowboy?" she asked, accepting the cup with both hands. A smile softened Ethan's weather-worn face. "I suppose I am. I work cattle most seasons. Papa said cowboys are the bravest men in the West." Emma's declaration was matter-of-fact, her faith absolute. "Your papa sounds like a wise man," Ethan replied gently. He glanced at Serena, who watched the interaction with a lump in her throat. They ate quickly and departed as the sun crested the eastern mesas. Ethan had rearranged their supplies to better accommodate 3 riders, fashioning a more comfortable seat for Emma between himself and Serena. The little girl's initial shyness quickly faded as Ethan pointed out jackrabbits, hawks, and the distant shapes of deer on their journey. By midday, they had left the familiar territory around Copper Springs far behind. Ethan led them through landscapes Serena had never seen: red rock canyons, stretches of sagebrush that seemed to extend forever, and narrow passes where the buckskin picked its way carefully along ancient trails. "How do you know these paths?" Serena asked during a brief stop to rest the horse. Ethan handed her a canteen. "Spent some time with the Paiute. Before that, rode with a trapper who knew every water hole from here to the Rockies." He adjusted his hat against the sun. "Useful knowledge for a man who sometimes needs to avoid the main trails. Are you running from the law?" The question slipped out before Serena could stop it. Ethan's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Not exactly. Let's just say I've crossed paths with men like Daniels before, and they don't take kindly to interference." As they continued their journey, Ethan remained vigilant, frequently scanning the horizon and occasionally doubling back to ensure they weren't being followed. By nightfall, they had reached a secluded canyon with a small freshwater spring, a precious resource in the arid landscape. Ethan helped Serena and Emma dismount, then efficiently set about making camp. Emma, despite the long day of riding, found energy to explore the small area under Serena's watchful eye, delighting in discoveries of lizards and interesting rocks. "She's a brave little one," Ethan observed as he built a small, nearly smokeless fire. Serena nodded, watching her daughter examine a piece of quartz. "She's had to be, after her father died." She trailed off, the memories still raw. "What happened?" Ethan asked quietly, offering her a plate of beans he'd warmed over the fire. Serena accepted the plate, gathering her thoughts. "Thomas was a good man. Came west with dreams of striking it rich in the silver mines. We met in Denver, married quickly. I was 19, naive about how hard life out here could be." She took a small bite before continuing. "The mine collapsed. 12 men died. The company paid the widows a pittance, barely enough for a proper burial. I took work at Daniel's saloon serving drinks. It was respectable enough at first. Until it wasn't," Ethan finished for her, his voice grim. Serena nodded. "Daniels kept changing the terms. Said Thomas had gambling debts, said I wasn't bringing in enough customers. The debt grew, and then yesterday." She looked over at Emma, lowering her voice. "He said he'd found buyers for both of us." Ethan's hand tightened around his tin cup. "There are men who deal in such trade along the border, sell women to mining camps, children to whoever will pay." His green eyes met hers, fierce in the firelight. "They won't touch either of you." "Not while I draw breath." The conviction in his voice made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "You hardly know us." "I know enough," he replied simply. That night, as Emma slept curled against her side, Serena watched Ethan take first watch, his silhouette strong and steady against the star-filled sky. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt the faintest stirring of hope. The next morning brought a change in weather. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rare summer rain. Ethan studied the sky with concern as they broke camp. "We'll need to find better shelter than I planned," he said, helping Emma onto the horse. "Flash floods in these canyons can be deadly." They rode harder that day, Ethan pushing the buckskin as much as he dared given their triple burden. By mid-afternoon, the first raindrops began to fall, fat and heavy against the parched earth. "There's an old trading post about an hour ahead," Ethan shouted over the rising wind. "Run by a Frenchman named Dubois. Not the friendliest sort, but he'll give us shelter for the right price." The rain intensified, soaking them despite Ethan's oilskin coat, which he had draped over Emma and Serena. Thunder rolled across the sky, and the buckskin grew increasingly skittish with each lightning strike. They were still a half hour from the trading post when disaster struck. A particularly close lightning bolt spooked the horse, causing him to rear unexpectedly. Serena felt herself sliding. Emma clutched tightly to her chest. Ethan made a desperate grab for them, but the momentum was too great. Serena and Emma tumbled from the saddle. Serena twisted her body to take the brunt of the fall, protecting Emma as they hit the muddy ground. Pain shot through her ankle and she cried out. Ethan was off the horse in an instant, kneeling beside them. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved quickly, checking Emma for injuries before turning to Serena. Emma was crying but appeared unharmed. Serena, however, couldn't suppress a gasp of pain when Ethan's fingers gently probed her ankle. "Bad sprain, maybe worse," he muttered, his face grim. The rain poured down around them, plastering his hair to his forehead. "Can you stand?" Serena tried but collapsed back with a cry of pain. Emma's sobs intensified. "I'm sorry, Mama," the little girl wailed. "I moved too much." "It's not your fault, sweetheart," Serena assured her, pulling her close despite the pain. She looked up at Ethan, seeing the concern in his eyes. "Go on to the trading post, bring back help." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm not leaving you two alone out here." Without further discussion, he lifted Emma and placed her back on the horse, securing her with a length of rope. Then he turned to Serena. "This is going to hurt," he warned before scooping her into his arms. Serena bit back a cry as her ankle jostled. Ethan carried her to the horse, somehow managing to lift her onto the saddle despite her height and the awkward angle. Then, taking the reins, he began leading the buckskin through the rain, walking steadily despite the increasingly treacherous ground. For nearly an hour, Ethan trudged through mud that sometimes reached his calves, never complaining, never slowing. Serena watched him through rain-blurred eyes, marveling at his determination. Even Emma fell silent, sensing the gravity of their situation. Just when Serena thought they couldn't possibly continue, a structure appeared through the curtain of rain, a squat stone building with a wooden porch and smoke rising from a chimney despite the summer heat. "Dubois," Ethan called as they approached. "Need shelter." The door opened, revealing a tall, thin man with a graying beard and suspicious eyes. He took in the sight before him, Ethan mud-covered and exhausted, Serena and Emma soaked and shivering atop the horse. "McCall," the man acknowledged with a French accent. "You bring trouble to my door." "Just the weather," Ethan replied. "Woman's hurt, child's exhausted, need a roof for the night." Dubois hesitated, then stepped aside. "Bring them in. But you owe me, Cowboy." The interior of the trading post was cluttered but warm. Half the space was devoted to merchandise, canned goods, ammunition, tools, and dry goods. The other half served as Dubois living quarters with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table and several chairs. Ethan carried Serena to a chair near the fire, then went back out to secure and shelter the horse. Dubois watched with arms crossed, saying nothing as Serena comforted Emma. When Ethan returned, dripping water onto the plank floor, Dubois finally spoke. "Who follows you, McCall?" Ethan removed his sodden hat. "Man named Daniels from Copper Springs, slave trader in all but name." Dubois spat into the fire. "I know this man, bad business." He looked at Serena and Emma with new understanding. "The child, both," Ethan said tersely. "They've done nothing wrong." The Frenchman nodded slowly. "I have no love for such men. You may stay until the woman can ride." He moved to a cabinet, removing bandages and a bottle of whiskey. "For the pain," he explained, offering the bottle to Serena. Ethan knelt beside her chair. "Let me see your ankle." Carefully, he removed her mud-soaked boot and torn stocking. Serena winced as his calloused fingers gently examined the swollen joint. "Not broken, I think," he said after a moment. "Bad sprain. You'll need to stay off it for a few days." "We can't stay that long," Serena protested. Daniels would need to be a better tracker than the Comanche to find this place in this weather," Dubois interrupted. "And I do not welcome such men to my door." He handed Ethan the bandages. "Bind it well, Cowboy. I will make food for the child." As Ethan wrapped her ankle with practiced efficiency, Serena studied his face. Lines of fatigue etched his features, yet his hands remained gentle. "Thank you," she said softly. "You could have left us. Most men would have." Ethan's hands paused briefly. "I'm not most men." His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or something deeper that neither was ready to name. The storm continued through the night and into the next day. Dubois proved to be a taciturn but generous host, sharing his limited space and provisions without complaint. He even produced a small wooden horse for Emma, carved by his own hand during the long winter months. Ethan used the forced rest to repair tack, clean his weapons, and plan their onward journey. He spent hours poring over a crude map with Dubois, speaking in low tones about routes and water sources. Serena, confined to a pallet near the fire, watched the two men and marveled at how her life had changed in just 3 days. From the brink of unthinkable horror to this strange sanctuary, all because a stranger had chosen to intervene. On the second evening, as Emma slept and Dubois stepped outside to check his livestock, Ethan joined Serena by the fire. "How's the ankle?" he asked, settling beside her. "Better," she replied. "Still painful, but the swelling has gone down." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Why were you heading to Copper Springs that day?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I was looking for someone. A woman and her son taken by Daniels 6 months ago." His voice was flat, but Serena heard the pain beneath the words. "My sister and her boy. Her husband was killed in a dispute over water rights. Daniels offered her protection. By the time I got word and came looking, they were gone." Serena's hand found his, fingers curling around his larger ones. "I'm so sorry. Been tracking them since," Ethan continued. "Last lead pointed to Copper Springs." His fingers tightened around hers. "When I saw you and Emma, I couldn't let it happen again." "We'll find them," Serena said with conviction she didn't know she possessed. "Together." Ethan looked at her then, surprise and something warmer in his eyes. "It's dangerous. Daniels has connections all through the territory." "So do you, apparently." Serena nodded toward where Dubois had exited. "And I owe you a debt I can never repay. Let me help." The smile that slowly spread across Ethan's face transformed him, easing the hard lines and revealing the man beneath the vigilant exterior. "You're something else, Serena Moss." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Emma stirred in her sleep, breaking the spell. Ethan gently squeezed Serena's hand once more before releasing it. "Get some rest," he said, rising. "Tomorrow we plan our next move." The storm finally broke on the third day, leaving behind mud-slicked trails but clearer skies. Dubois, after a lengthy discussion with Ethan, provided them with additional supplies and a crude map marked with safe houses and water sources. "Friends of mine," the Frenchman explained as he handed the map to Serena. "People who help others disappear when needed. Show them this." He pressed a small carved wooden token into her palm, "and they will know you come from me." "Thank you," Serena said, genuinely moved by the gruff man's kindness. "I don't know how to repay you." Dubois waved a dismissive hand. "Live free, that is payment enough in this world." Ethan had fashioned a more secure seating arrangement on the buckskin, with a special brace to support Serena's injured ankle. As he helped her mount, his hands lingered at her waist. "Sure you're ready to ride?" he asked quietly. Serena nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Emma, excited by the prospect of continuing their adventure, bounced impatiently in front of Ethan. "Are we going to see the Indians now?" Ethan chuckled, lifting her onto the saddle. "Soon enough, little one. First, we have some other friends to visit." They bid farewell to Dubois, who watched them depart with an unreadable expression. As they rode away, Serena glanced back to see him raise his hand in a final salute. Their journey took them deeper into territory Serena had never seen, mesas rising majestically from the desert floor, hidden valleys where unexpected greenery flourished, ancient pathways worn into stone by centuries of use. Ethan was a patient guide, naming plants and animals for Emma's benefit, pointing out landmarks, always aware of their surroundings. They stopped at two of Dubois' safe houses, one a small homestead run by a Cherokee woman and her white husband, the other a remote monastery where silent monks welcomed them with food and clean pallets. At each stop, Ethan inquired about his sister and nephew, and at each stop he was met with sympathy but no information. Yet he never lost hope, and his determination only made Serena admire him more. It was during their fifth night on the trail, camped in the shelter of a massive boulder, that everything changed. Emma had fallen asleep quickly after their evening meal, exhausted from a day of riding. Serena sat beside the small fire, combing tangles from her hair when Ethan returned from checking the perimeter of their camp. "All quiet," he reported, settling beside her. The firelight played across his features, softening the hard angles. "How's the ankle?" "Much better," Serena replied. "I barely notice it now." Ethan nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the night sounds of the desert creating a peaceful backdrop. "I've been thinking," Ethan finally said, his voice low to avoid waking Emma. "About what happens when we reach the Paiute." Serena's hands stilled in her hair. "Oh, they'll welcome you and Emma, give you shelter for as long as you need." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "But I'll need to keep moving, keep looking for Abigail and Thomas." Disappointment settled in Serena's chest, though she knew his words were reasonable. What had she expected? That he would abandon his search for his family. "I understand," she said quietly. "You've done more than enough for us already." Ethan turned to look at her, the firelight reflecting in his green eyes. "Thing is, I don't want to leave you behind." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. "These past days, I've started to care for you both, more than I should, maybe." Serena's heart quickened. "I feel the same," she confessed. "Emma adores you and I." She trailed off, unable to find the right words. Ethan reached out, his calloused fingers gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I know it's fast. Know you're still grieving Thomas, but out here, life doesn't wait." Death comes too easy and chances for happiness are rare. Yes, Serena agreed, leaning slightly into his touch. Thomas would want us to be happy, to be safe. I can't promise safety, Ethan said honestly. Not while Daniels and men like him still operate freely. But I can promise to protect you both with everything I have, to find a place where we can build something good. And your sister, Serena asked. Your nephew, we keep looking, Ethan said firmly. Together, as a family if you'll have me. The word family hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. Serena found herself nodding, tears pricking her eyes. I'd like that, she whispered. We both would. Ethan's smile was slow and warm as he leaned forward, his hand cupping her cheek with infinite tenderness. Their first kiss was gentle, a question asked and answered in the space of a heartbeat. When they parted, something new had been born between them, fragile yet strong, like the first green shoot after a desert rain. 2 days later, they reached the Paiute settlement. Ethan was greeted with genuine affection by the tribal elders, who welcomed Serena and Emma with equal warmth once they understood the situation. It was there, in the safety of the settlement, that they received unexpected news. A Paiute hunter returning from a trading expedition reported seeing a woman and child matching Abigail and Thomas's description at a mission near the Mexican border. 3 days' ride, Ethan told Serena, hope and anxiety warring in his expression. If it's them, then we go, Serena said simply. All of us together. The journey to the mission was tense but uneventful. Emma, sensing the importance of their quest, asked fewer questions and stayed close to them both. Serena found herself watching Ethan, noting the increasing tension in his shoulders as they drew closer to their destination. The San Xavier mission rose white and imposing against the blue sky, its twin towers visible for miles across the desert. As they approached, Ethan's hand found Serena's, squeezing once before he dismounted. A young nun met them at the entrance, her eyes widening slightly at Ethan's trail-worn appearance. May I help you, senor? I'm looking for a woman and her son, Ethan said, removing his hat. She would be about 30, blonde hair. The boy is 7 with a birthmark on his right arm. The nun's expression changed from caution to recognition. Senora McCall, she is here, and the boy, she hesitated, are you? Family, I'm her brother, Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. Ethan McCall, the nun smiled. Wait here, senor, I will bring them. The minutes that followed were the longest of Ethan's life. Serena stood beside him, Emma's hand in hers, offering silent support as they waited in the cool shade of the mission's courtyard. And then they appeared, a slender woman with hair the same sun-streaked brown as Ethan's, and a boy whose face lit up with recognition. Uncle Ethan. The child broke free from his mother, running across the courtyard to launch himself into Ethan's waiting arms. Abigail followed more slowly, disbelief and joy warring on her face. Ethan, is it really you? The reunion that followed was filled with tears and laughter. Abigail had escaped from the men transporting her and Thomas, finding sanctuary at the mission. She had been afraid to leave, certain that Daniel's men were searching for them. As the initial emotion settled, Ethan introduced Serena and Emma. Abigail's eyes moved between her brother and Serena, a knowing smile curving her lips. I see you've been busy, brother, she said softly. That night, as the children slept under the watchful eyes of the nuns, the adults gathered in the mission's small garden. Plans were made, possibilities discussed. The mission could offer continued protection for all of them, or they could travel further south into Mexico or north to Colorado, where Ethan had friends from his cattle-driving days. What matters, Ethan said, his arm around Serena's shoulders, is that we stay together. All of us. 3 months later, the small caravan crossed into Colorado territory. 2 wagons carried their belongings, Ethan and Serena in one, Abigail and the children in the other. A small herd of cattle, purchased with money from the sale of Abigail's wedding jewelry, trailed behind under the watchful eye of 2 hired hands. They settled in a valley near the foothills of the Rockies, far from Daniel's reach. The land was fertile, with a clear stream running through it and ample grazing for the growing herd. Ethan and Abigail worked side by side to build the first cabin, then a second. Serena planted a garden, using seeds gifted by the mission nuns. Emma and Thomas became inseparable, exploring their new home with the boundless energy of children freed from fear. On a clear autumn evening, as the first snow dusted the distant peaks, Ethan found Serena by the stream. She was washing clothes, her hair tied back with a ribbon, humming softly to herself. "Beautiful," Ethan said, coming to stand beside her. Serena looked up, smiling. "The sunset, it is lovely." "I meant you," he clarified, reaching for her hand. "You look happy here." "I am happy," she confirmed, allowing him to pull her to her feet. "Emma is thriving. Abigail has become the sister I never had, and you—" Her smile deepened. "You've given us more than just safety, you've given us a home." Ethan's hands framed her face. "Marry me," he said simply. "Make this family official." Serena's answer was in her kiss, a promise of forever, sealed beneath the vast Colorado sky. The wedding took place the following spring, with wildflowers carpeting the valley. Emma stood proudly beside her mother, Thomas beside his uncle. Abigail wept happy tears as the circuit preacher pronounced them man and wife. That night, as Ethan held his new wife close, he marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a chance meeting on a dusty New Mexico road to this, a family forged not by blood but by choice, by love, by the determination to protect what mattered most. "No regrets," he whispered against Serena's hair. She turned in his arms, her eyes reflecting the moonlight streaming through their cabin window. "Not one," she assured him. "Every step led us here, led us home." Outside, the Colorado night wrapped around their cabin like a protective embrace. Inside, love had transformed strangers into family, fear into hope, and a desperate escape into the beginning of a beautiful journey together.